Let's see if it goes live. Is what? Is 1 month? Did it make sense? What parts were hard? What was maybe confusing? Which one? Everything. Okay. The instructions could have been better. Okay. How far did you get? Let's do. So from 1 to 5, where 5 is done, how far do you get? Five is done. Where is everybody else? 19 votes. Okay, so I guess just keep working on it. But we're gonna move on to middleware, Express Middleware. Keep working on it and submit it as soon as you can. If you have any questions, reach out. No, don't leave with questions unanswered. Cool. So let's talk about Express Middleware. So what is Express Middleware? So first of all, let me quit stuff that I don't need. This. I'm gonna go to the folders that we've been working on. CD core, unit 3. I create a folder here called Express Middleware. Express Middleware. So middleware is actually something that we have already seen or we have already used. We might not have called it middleware yet. So let's go middleware, and here I'm going to create a folder or a file just called server.js. Also, since I know that I'm gonna need to install Express. In this folder, I'm gonna do npm init -y to accept all the defaults, and then I'm gonna do npm install server.js. Oh, not server, Express. Installing Express. We shouldn't need anything else, at least for now. So I'm going to open this with code. Let me change this. So we have a file server.js where we can start writing a JavaScript Express server. Everyone has their file ready to go? So let's import Express here. Wait, didn't I disable it? This import or requires Express. Require. Add. Let's create a variable for our port. I'm gonna use 3000. App.listen at port 3000. No need for const here. Good point. Thank you, Suzette. Const app equal to invoking the Express function. And then here to console log. Does this get annoying? Like when VS Code shows me this, it gets annoying. Okay, let's disable that. Why didn't you guys say it before? So you can keep looking at the file. Where is this one? Quick suggestions, true. Quick suggestions, false. Okay. Let me quit and start again, see if that is disabled. Cool, I think it's disabled. Cool. Okay, so here we just have, so that we know where our server is running, localhost. Is this font size enough? Cool. So let's do node server or nodemon. And we have our server running. Now, what is this server doing so far? Just listening, right? It's not handling any response. So I'm going to open another one of my terminals in here. I'm going to open it at the bottom. This is just another tab. I'm going to try to do a network request with curl. To something /dog, and we get this HTML saying error cannot get /dog. That's because we haven't set up any routes or route handler, right? Cool. And also, this is, you see that you get HTML as a response, even though we never wrote any HTML here, right? That's because Express, since it's a module that somebody else wrote, they found that it was good if they give you something like this in HTML to reply with if you don't have that route handle. We could change that later on. In fact, later on, we don't want this to be what we reply when we get an error or when something is not found. Cool. So let's go on to what middleware. So let me pull out here. GitHub. I'm also going to be sharing this repo with you later on. There's middleware. Cool. So middleware are functions, and they are a core concept in Express. And hopefully by the end of today, you will see why is it a core concept in Express. It is tricky to grasp. Hopefully when I explain it clear enough. If you have any questions, raise your hand and let's be more precise. I remember this was one of the trickiest concepts for me. I didn't think it was particularly hard. It was more about, like reading the documentation. This Express has a section under guide, under the guide link called using middleware. You read this and you are a master of middleware. You didn't, if you had read this before coming to class, you wouldn't need to be here today in this class. Cool. So basically, we're just going to get to that and break it down. What middleware allows to do is have sort of like a plugin system that I could, I can create a server, and then if I need to do a certain task that's maybe not specifically related to the server, that it will be helpful in the server, I could use that, I could write that other task as a middleware function and bring it into my Express server and use it. That is a lot of how as our server starts to grow, we're gonna be seeing a lot of that. We're gonna be pulling in some code from somebody else wrote that is going to be middleware, and we're gonna plug it into our Express server. Why are they useful? They're useful to perform additional work on every request. Some examples are like parsing the body data or timestamping the request, or even logging the request. For instance, wouldn't it be nice if for every request that my server receives, I could see here in the terminal, like, oh, a get request to /dog arrived, right? And maybe at what time that request happened. For instance, this is something that a lot of servers in production do, which is they'll keep a log. Actually, I can show you one right now. I can show you the log for the to-dos API that we built. I'll be Heroku logs. Yeah, here. Let's do this one. Films reviews. This is another API. So this server is running on a computer that Heroku lends me. Wait, maybe this. There seems to be no logs. Let me just see if the to-dos API has some logs. This one. If not, we can make some up here. Okay, this. So the to-dos API that I built for way back on when we were learning DOM manipulation, that you could create to-dos, mark them as completed. That is a server. That is an Express server that I created. And this, my server is logging every request that arrives to the server. Why did I pick to do that? Because I want to know what routes are being accessed by the user. Maybe when a route returns an error, I also want to know that. And logs are used for keeping track of when events happen, right? So imagine if we could add a log like this to our server, so that when you add a new to-do, or when you add a new, what's the other one that we were looking at today? When you make a request when you receive a request to retrieve some information from Giphy, you show, for instance, when that request was made, like that is this part. For instance, here, when was that request made? What kind of request it was? What endpoint was it used? And what response was given? A 404 in this case, for instance. So this might have been some of you at, when was this? The 13th. This is some hour and at 40 minutes. Somebody made a request to this endpoint, and that gave a 404. So this is useful for keeping track of how your APIs are being used, and if something goes wrong, for instance. Right? So middleware could help us do that, and we're going to see how to accomplish such things. So let's go back here. Let me close all this other stuff. Cool. So what's middleware? So we can think of a server as a computer program that we run on our computers, and that it receives some inputs that we call requests, and it produces some outputs that we call responses, right? So if we think in that way, like, then the lines between sort of like, depending on what level of abstraction we're talking about, you could say, or that definition will also apply to a function, right? A function is a thing that receives some inputs, does some work, and gives some output, right? And the server is technically the same thing. You just make some request, the server will do some work, and the server gives you back a response, right? So if we think of that as a server. Middleware is all the stuff that happens in between those 2 points, basically receiving a request and sending out a response. So everything that's in the middle, all the functionality that you want to do in the middle, like for instance, your function to get a GIF image from the Giphy API, right? Everything that happens in the middle between a request coming into the server and a response being produced from the server are executed and made in what is known as middleware. And a middleware is just a function. It's just a function. Remember that receives the request, the response, and something called next. Also, let me show you this diagram here that we have. This, close this. Here, this is what I was talking about. Let me see if I can open this just now. Open image new tab. So this is middleware. And we're gonna get to see what exactly. So, you have a server. The server is like this, and the entire thing, the outermost box. The server receives a request, right? That request is passed by Express to a series of middleware. And this middleware, remember, they're just functions, nothing more than a function. So the Express will pass in the request to the first middleware. If that middleware has the option of sending a response and cutting everything else. So, for instance, the middleware A has 2 options. Middleware A can send a response back to the client or whoever requested the information, in which case the request just the response get exited, like sort of through here, and none of the other middleware gets executed. Or the middleware could also do some work with the request. For instance, that work could be logging in, like not logging in, logging the, adding a console log basically to a log for us to see what kind of request was made, right? We don't want to send the response back yet. We want to pass that to the next thing that will do something else with the request. So for instance, this middleware here could use console log details about the request, and it doesn't send a response yet. It calls the next middleware, or it passes down the control to the next middleware, and the next middleware can do anything we want with the response or the request. And then this middleware has the same 2 options. It can send a response and not execute, preventing the execution of the rest of the middleware, or do some work and then move on to the next middleware. And so this is sort of like the conceptual of how it's going to work. So I like to think of Express also. It's sort of like another analogy to this diagram as a pipe. Like you have a pipe, imagine you have a Lego pipe that you could just add new chunks to. You add new chunks to the pipe. So imagine you have this pipe that's long, and through the pipe you get the response and the request. And more importantly, the request. And in this pipe, you could just add new chunks, and one chunk could do like the logging of the details about the request, for instance. Another chunk could do, for instance, could parse the body of a post request. Another chunk could make an API call to the Giphy API, and as soon as that comes back, send back the response to a client or whoever requested that. So that's sort of like another analogy that I like to think about as Express. Express is just like this very customizable pipe that you can attach other things to do custom work. And that is a very powerful concept in Express. That's why Express is I think is the most popular backend framework. Let's see, and even this is across see. Backend, Cake PHP, Django, Ruby on Rails, Phoenix, Express.js. And this is across, these frameworks are across all languages. So like, for instance, Cake PHP is a framework like Express, but for PHP language to create backends. Django is very similar to Express. I did some work in Django. Django is a Python framework for building backends. Django has this same concept of middleware, which was why I was able to do the work that I was entrusted by my employer. So Django uses the same concept of middleware, a pipe that you could just attach stuff to and do custom work. Ruby on Rails is the same as Express, but for the Ruby programming language. Flax, this is in Python based. Phoenix, haven't heard of it. It's another language called Erlang, and Express. So I think if we change this search to most popular backend framework node, Express will come up at the top. Yeah. 43,000 GitHub stars. Probably millions of downloads on NPM. So Express, that's why we teach Express. This is the most popular framework for building backend applications in Node. And this is at the top because of that concept of middleware, of a pipe that you can just add new stuff to it and customize. Cool, so let's look at what that actually looks like. So let's look at this example. I'm going to copy this and add it to my server. So I added a route so that when we go to just the root endpoint, remember that this is known as the root endpoint, just a slash, we reply with something called hello world, or with the string, the text hello world. So let's try that in here. Let me run my server. Node one. Open a new tab under here, and then I'm gonna make this network request with curl. Localhost just slash. So there are two kinds of middleware that we can use in Express. One is like route level middleware. And the second kind will be app level middleware. So this example is, so the example that we're going to do is route level middleware. So it turns out that we have been, so if you think about this definition, middlewares are just functions. Middlewares are just functions, and they receive the request, the response, and the next argument. Where have we seen something similar to this? A function receiving these arguments. Peter? Callback function, yeah. This callback function, right? This callback function are known, so that you're not surprised, are known as route handlers or request handlers. This callback function, the second argument to the .get function or the .get method of the app. The first argument is the endpoint. The second argument is a function that is also sometimes called the request handler or the route handler. Similar to the event handlers, you guys remember that? When you do add event listener, the first argument is the type of event you want to listen for, and the second is a function that will handle that event. So similar, that concept repeats on JavaScript because it's a powerful concept. So here is the same. This is what we call a route handler. So cool. So callbacks that we pass to our routes, yeah, we talked about that, are also known as route handlers or request handlers. These callbacks in here are actually middleware. And we're going to see why they are middleware. So remember that I said the middleware has two options. Two middleware options. One is to do something. Do something with the request. Like logging. So do something with the request. And call the next middleware. So this is do something with the request and call the next middleware, or the second option is respond or send a response. So a middleware has the power of doing these two things. So far, this function that we have here, which one of the two is doing? Sending that response, right? So let's look at how we could have it. Well, one, we'll need to, for doing something with the request and calling the next middleware, before we can do that, we'll need to have a few middleware, at least one more. So let's add one here. Okay, so so this is another way to express that, what I was saying. These callbacks are in fact considered middleware. And why? That's because the callback can signal to Express that is done with whatever work he was going to do, and call this function that we have in, that we're going to see next, call next, to signal to Express, I'm done, call the next middleware. And then we're going to revisit this. Upon a middleware invoking next, Express calls the next middleware in the chain until some middleware sends a response. So here, let's do this. So I'm going to create here const. I'm going to create a function because a middleware is just a function. What's the example that we have here? Just console log middleware. So I'm going to do const middleware a equal a function. Middleware always receive the request, the response, and next in that respective order as arguments. So here you get rec, res, and next. And here we also have next here. It's just that we haven't used it yet. We also get next here. So I have middleware A, and what this is going to do is this is going to console log this is middleware. This is middleware A. So I have a function. Let's see if this helps. I'm gonna take this function out, and I'm gonna put it here. I'm gonna say like const send hello world, just like this. So I took my function out of here of the callback that I was immediately defining here, and I'm just gonna do it like this: send hello world. Right? So whenever a request arrives to this endpoint, we call the send hello world message, right? Or we call this function, which is gonna send the hello world message. So let's look at this before we move on. We should see our server should still work the same. Hello world is the response. So everything is clear so far in here. We just created a function. I basically took that function from being defined here in the arguments directly to its own variable. Now what I'm going to do is, instead of having one rat handler, I'm going to have two. So I'm going to call here middleware A, hey, comma, send hello world. So you can think of it in this way. So, you know, picking up the type of express, we have this, right? And then now I have two middleware. Middleware A will come before the function send hello world. Remember that all middlewares have these two options. They can do something with the request. Actually, they can do something. It's optional whether they do with the request or not. Most of the time they will. And call the next middleware, or you can send a response. Right? So let's see. This is middleware A. Let's have this. So note here what is going to happen. So when a request arrives, a GET request arrives to the root endpoint, middleware A is going to get invoked, right? So if you have that in mind, and sort of what we have talked about here, thumbs up if you say we're gonna see console log, this is middleware A, and also, or not console log, let's do console log, yeah, console. Hello world. Oh, this didn't go away. So yeah, both are console log. So thumbs up if we're gonna see both console logs. Thumbs down if you're gonna see only one console log. So Thumbs down. So thumbs up if we're gonna see both console log, we're gonna see this is middleware A and hello world. And thumbs down if we're gonna see only this is middleware A. Okay, so I think most of you are correct. We're going to see only this is middleware A because these are the two options that the middleware has, right? The middleware can do something with the request and call next, or it can send a response. So middleware, the way that we have it set up here, what it's going to do is the request arrives to this middleware. Because this middleware is sending a response, this is like hijacking here, going straight out. Because this middleware is sending the response. And this middleware never gets executed, this other function. So let's see that. This is middleware A. We don't see, or this also says, send hello world was never called. Send hello world was never called. Why? Because the first middleware, the first function, sent the response. Right? So we see this, the two actions that the middleware can take. We saw this one. We send the response. And when we send the response, the response is just sent, no other middleware gets executed. This is another example that we're going to see later on. Like, for instance, there is a function that we're going to be using a lot to check whether a user is logged in or not. Guess what? That function will be implemented with a middleware. And there's a middleware, most of us on here, we call it like login required. That middleware will look at the request, we'll see if the user is authenticated, then let it go to the next middleware. If it's not authenticated, then reply saying you're not authorized to use this site. That is like another example. So now let's see. Oh, also these two options are exclusive, right? The middleware cannot do both at the same time. Can only do one. So let's see it having going on the first option. So I said, let's do here. So for a middleware to signal to Express that its job is done, that it can call the next middleware, we can call the next function, the third argument here to the function. Now, try this yourself, see what you get, check on whoever is sitting near you, see if your results differ. When you make a network request with curl or with Postman, it doesn't matter. Cool. What did you guys say? Peter? A little bit louder, one more time.
Send hello world function. It goes through the middleware one, and then it runs the send hello world function.
So let's see that. Curl we see these two console log first, that this is middleware A. This is the first function. After that, we see the second console log, hello world, on the second middleware. And the second middleware is send the response, which in this case is hello world. So what's going on here, instead of like the middleware A sending the response, middleware A just calls next. And what that is, it tells Express, oh, this function is done, I can invoke the next one. And then the request just sort of continues to this one. Now the send hello world function does send the request, the response that goes out to the client. Yes?
Did you mention like what the middleware is for?
Yes. One good use case is for logging. For instance, as I showed before, do I still have it open? For a server to generate these kind of logs so that we log what request came in and at what time and what did we reply with. This can tell us, this having something like this, logging requests like this can tell us if our APIs are being abused, if our APIs are failing. Maybe the user is trying to add an endpoint that is supposed to work, but it doesn't work. So that's one good use. Another good use is the one that I mentioned earlier, to check if a user is logged in. If the user is logged in, we let it go to the next middleware. Otherwise, we respond saying, you're not logged in, or please log in, something like that. Yes?
So the respond in middleware A in the first middleware function
Uh-huh.
ends any future responses?
Yes, that's correct. So if I invoke rest.send here, this is middleware A, which was what we did before. This prevents the execution of any other middleware. In fact, we might let's not call A. Then let's call not call the next one. So this we see that sending that response from any middleware just aborts checking the other or running the other middlewares, hijack or whatever you want to call it. Yes.
So you pretty much said this is used for logins and to see those things on console. Is there any other use like that's not doing those?
Yeah. So we have been using, and that's like on this section on the app level middleware. We have been using CORS, right? The CORS module. Guess what? That's middleware, and we could look at it inside, and it's a very tiny function. We're gonna actually write it ourselves. A body parser for parsing in data that comes in a post request. That is middleware. That one is a little bit more complicated. We're not gonna write ourselves here. So what those middlewares are doing is they check just like middleware A. Well, middleware A is not doing anything with the request. But what middleware A is looking at is it a post request? If it's a post request, then do we have data in the body? So that data is just going to be on a string. We have to parse and create this object that will be available on the rec.body, or even there's some internal middleware that we're not used to seeing, which is, for instance, the query, the rec.query. You see how when you do something like /search colon, or let's see, search model, or search, let's do this, color, red, right? So this is like some query parameters that we're learning how to use now. You see how then you do, like, you can just do rec.query, and have an object that has color as the property and red as the value, right? That is implemented internally as middleware because the server, if we were still making servers with HTTP, the native module, we'll need to look. The HTTP doesn't do much for you. You will need to take in this string basically and create that order yourself. So those are some of the uses for middleware. So for instance, let's see. Let's talk a little bit more about this. So yeah, these callbacks that we specify here are in fact considered middleware because they can signal to Express that they're done by invoking next. Upon invoking next, Express calls the next middleware in the chain until some middleware sends a response with one of the sender methods in the response, such as res.json or res.send. Right? This is what we were just talking about. Cool. So let's look at a more real useful example. So we could do something. A middleware could also be used for. Let's say you're registering a user. All right, and you don't want the user to register if they didn't provide all the information, would you? So let's say for a user to register, they will need username, email, and password. If they don't specify those three, we shouldn't allow the request, right? So let's implement something like that. So let's do, so this was like one example. Let's look at another one here. I'm going to do app.get / sign up. Actually, this is not going to be a get, it's going to be a post. Because when you sign up, you're sending sensitive information. And where do we want the sensitive information to travel in? In the body of the request, right? We don't want the password to travel in the URL because then anybody who is like me, for instance, anybody that's logging the URLs could just see your password. Password should travel always, or any sensitive information, always on the request body, and I'm going to make a post request to here. Now I'm going to say here, let's just leave it like this. Before that, let's create two middleware functions. Const, I'm going to see check, or this is known as validate input. So this is my first middleware. I'm going to call it here validate input. So remember that as all middleware, you get the request, the response, and something called next. So what this function is going to do is going to check in the request body to see that we have a username, that the user who submitted the form has a username, has an email, and has a password. If one of those are missing, we want to reply, please provide all the information. So let's do that in here. So actually, let's do this. For now, I'm going to just console log. This function is not going to do anything yet until we see something. Console. Let's do console log rec.body because I want to inspect the body of the request. So when a post request arrives to this endpoint, invoke validate input. And validate input is not doing much right now, it's just console logging the request body. So now, let's send a network request with some body. We could do that with curl. I don't remember, so I'm not going to try it. I'm just going to go to Postman. We could just the way that you can send requests, get requests with curl, you could also do all other types of requests. You just need to specify some extra information. So I'm just going to do it with Postman for simplicity's sake. Let me close this annoying thing. Here, so I'm going to post request. Let's just start this from scratch. New one is going to be a post request. I'm going to do HTTP localhost colon 3000 sign up. And then here on Postman, I want to specify the body of my request. So I'm going to go here to body. Here I want to specify that my body should come out in this format, in the XWW form URL encoded. And here I'm going to specify username, my random username or my GitHub username, email. Let's do pursuit, and password. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what I want my middleware to do is whenever this request arrives to the server, check that all the information is complete. Right? Check that we have all the information. Before that, we need to do some stuff. So one, let me show you here, or any questions up until this point of making this post request, adding a body to it. Cool. So remember what I said yesterday. Post request, I'm going to show you here what the post request looks like raw by going to code. And this is what that post request will look like raw. Just like all HTTP messages, like requests and responses, have two main components, headers and body. The headers are always separated from the body by one empty line. Right? So this is the headers. This says where the request is going, what method, and separated by one empty line, I find the body of my request. This is what I'm going to be sending. So let's see then if I hit send. Close this. I'm going to hit send with enter. Hit enter. The request, sending the request. Not sure if my server is running. Let's look at it here. Okay, yeah, my server is running. I see this console log undefined here. That is coming from, let's do here, rec.body. Look at it from here. So I just have, I like to add some strings to my console logs to be able to tell them apart. So I'm going to console log rec.body string followed by the actual rec.body. So let's try that one more time. I'm going to open this here. So our server is running over here. I hit enter here. And we get rec.body undefined. Why is the rec.body undefined? I can see in here that if I look at my request raw, my request has the content of my body. It has the username, the email, my password. But why when I try to do rec.body here, my body is undefined? Peter? I need the body parser. I need the body parser because this data is traveling in this format. And from this format, we want it to be in JSON format because JSON is easier to deal with. So the body parser is the one that's going to do that work for us. And body parser is one of those app level middleware that we're going to get into next. So I'm gonna go to my server here. I'm gonna import, but before I will need to install body parser equal require body parser. Note that when I save my file, since I run in a NodeMon and NodeMon checks for changes in my files, my server should break. Raise your hand if you know why my server is going to break. Oh, well, yeah, that is a very fair reason for it to break. After that, wait, it didn't break. Okay, it didn't break. Let's try to use body parser. So I'm going to do app.use body parser. Remember that we have to pass to the body parser function an object with a property called extended, whose value is false. Hey. Oh. URL encoded. Thank you. So let me kill my server and start it again. Okay, everything seems to be fine. This is not. It's not broken. Let's see if it breaks. Who has a suspicion that it's gonna break? Okay, only like a few of you. Let's try that again. So we saw that like our rec.body was undefined because we were not using the body part. So let's see if it works now. Close this, send the request with Postman. And we have our body parts. That's a good point. Let's say that a little bit louder, Peter.
Did you install it?
I did not install the body parser.
So does it install globally?
Maybe using the same folder.
Let's see. Let's inspect my package JSON. This should have, I was expecting this to break because I didn't install the body parser, right? I only did npm install express. And if I inspect my package JSON, I don't think I install, yeah, my dependencies doesn't include the body parser. Yeah.
That's a good point. Can you start your server with NodeMon instead right now?
Can I?
Without installing it, you just type NodeMon in your server.
Wait, if I type NodeMon,
Yeah, try it.
it will be available because it's globally installed. Yes.
So everywhere in your computer. So it's
Yeah.
safe for body parser.
That's what we're gonna verify. So let's see if I have. You can say where NodeMon was installed with which NodeMon, and it tells me that I have a folder called. Let's create this a little bit bigger. Which NodeMon? I have a folder called npm packages being NodeMon. So I want to check if in here I have the body parser. So let's do /users. Let's just copy this, cd, paste it. I just want to verify this. You don't need to do this if you don't want to. Okay, yeah. So I'm inside of this folder in my home folder called npm packages, and in there I only see that I have two things: create React app and NodeMon. So this tells me that body parser is not installed globally. NodeMon is installed globally, but not body parser. So I have the suspicion that then maybe body parser is a dependency of Express, right? So Express might come with it. I think, let's see. So if for us to verify that, I'm going to go back to my folder. So I'm here in my current folder. I'm going to go cd node modules ls and we have all the stuff that is inside of that. Then the body parser is a dependency of Express. Let's just double check that. If we go here to npmjs.com, search for Express. Let's look at the dependencies of Express. 30 packages. Express depends on 30 other packages, and body parser is one of them. The body parser listed here is one of the dependencies of Express. So what does that mean? You don't have to install it every time. You don't have to install it every time. What does it say? I think you're doing some advanced stuff. What function are you calling? In here. Check if you have the same that I have here. So we have, the body parser is here. And then down here I have app post sign up validate. Owen? Yes, because it's a dependency of Express. So I'm trying to think. I remember, so body parser, once upon a time, body parser was part of Melody. And then they saw that it made more sense to have it separate. Body parser was inside of Express, not as a dependency, but the code itself. And then they separated it later. Yes? Let's do a search here, npm.js body parser. And I think maybe here they have something history. No. So you know what? So when we have this stat, let's do should I install body parser? Body parser, how it works. There are some good articles here that you should check out. Install or not, body parser. And it seems that body parser and why you may not need it. I'm trying to think of maybe a reason why we should install it. The one I decide not to include body parser as their dependencies, right? But if we still try to use it and it was not installed by Express, then our app is going to break. Yes. That's a good one. Yeah. So let's see. Body parser, the module itself here is on version 119. So this is the latest version, 119. The version that is being used in Express might be older. Where could we find that? I think, yeah. So that is a good observation. Most likely, like always, they will try to use the latest all the time. But that will be one instance, yeah. If you want to use the latest version because it provides something that another module dependency doesn't, you want to install it explicitly yourself. Yeah, so you know what, and because of that, I'm going to kill the server here and install it myself. Because I guess like a safe rule that you could follow is if you're requiring it in your code, you should always install it explicitly. It should be like if if you're using it in your code, using require, it should always be listed here in dependencies, just as a being safe. Because somebody learning Express or somebody outside of the Express mindset might be looking at this and say, oh, they're importing body parser. I'm going to check if that is a dependency, right? They're importing body parser, and they don't see it here. Then, if they don't know how npm works, they wouldn't realize that the body parser is a dependency of Express. So, just to be safe, and a rule you can follow is if you're requiring it in your code, you better make sure that it's listed in here as one of your dependencies to be more explicit. Yes?
What's the caret for?
The caret is for saying I want this version or a most recent one, or the most recent version. Oh, I moved it. This was something that came out of people not updating to the latest module. So in this fashion, whenever I download your project, it will install the latest version if there is a new one, or the current version, which is this one. Mm-hmm. Cool. So I think we deviated a little bit from middleware, but let's get back into that. So everyone has body parser? No? What's the error? Let's solve it. Not a function. Do you check here you require? And the URL encoded, note that is not camel case. It's saying URL encoded is not a function, right? You don't have any spelling mistakes in here? I think JR is coming to the rescue. What was it? Oh, here? Spelling mistake, right? Yep. Cool. Spelling mistakes, you can waste hours on them. So check and double check. Cool. So there were some articles that we were seeing about, if you're interested in seeing how URL body parser works, read those. Let's just let's start here. Nodemon server. Let's have our server running. Oh, my computer is about to die. Cool. So body parser will let us access the request body parts in a JSON format, which is lovely. So let's go in here. Let's make our sign up request. Actually, let's walk up from here. So we have a route that is going to be listening for a post request, arriving to /signup, and is going to invoke the validate input function upon that request arriving. And what that function is going to do is just console log in rec.body. So let's actually fire that request with Postman. I have a request body. It's coming on this format. Let's hit send. And we have in our console the promised object, right? An object where this raw data like this was converted to a nice looking object that then we can key into. You see even the @ symbol was put back on. You see that here was encoded as %40, right? So this is the way this information travel in this way, in this encoded way. But once it arrived to the server, a middleware, the body parser middleware, took it from that format and put it into a JavaScript object. Okay, so let's keep going on our middleware, our route level middleware. So what I want to do here is I want to check if, so I'm going to do, let's create a variable here called let user equal to like new user equal rec.body. So I'm just putting the rec.body in this variable called new user because, you know, imagine we're creating a sign up endpoint in our APIs for registering a user. So I'm going to do if new user dot username is equal to the empty string, or let's just do like this. If no new user dot username or no new user dot email or no new user dot password, then reply with res.send. I'm going to do res.json error missing username, email, or password. Thank you. So what this function is going to do is it's going to check the username. If the username is a false value or an empty string, then, or the email is an empty string, basically they didn't specify it, or the password is an empty string, then just reply with res.json error missing username, email, or password. Right? Otherwise, we're going to handle the otherwise case just next. But is this making sense so far? How this function is handling our route. We're going to use it as middleware. So let's try this. Wait, anybody needs more time to finish typing this? those are done. Send a post request, and don't specify one of username, email, or password, and see if you can get this to show up. Missing username, email, or password. Yes, Peter?
It should show up in the Postman, right?
Yes, it should show up in the Postman, yeah.
Is there a way to stop, like when you're doing it correctly, is there a way to stop Postman from lagging?
Yes, which is handling it correctly, which we're gonna do next. So raise your hand if you saw missing username, email, or password. Cool. So let's see it here for all of us. We have Postman, sign up. Let's do, I'm going to not send the username. Hit send. I get error, missing email or password. Let's try with all the others just to make sure. Disable that, works. Now enable the email, disable the password, works. Cool. So now we have this function that will make sure that all the information that is needed for this route to properly work is there. And if it's not there, reply with an error saying, I don't have all the information that I need to work with. Right? Now, if I send all the 3 pieces of information in my post body, hit send, and here my server just hangs. Why does it hang? Joy? Because we don't send any response if everything went well, right? So in here, what I want to do is else. Else here we could send, as Joey said, we could send a good response here. Let's do this, res.json. Let's do like message. I'm gonna do welcome username or new user username. Or let's do, yeah, let's like this, user name. You have been registered, or registration successful. Welcome username, registration successful. Now try again. Try with missing username, email, or password, and then try with all of them. Raise your hand if yours is not working for some reason. Then we can go.
lots of headers out there sent to the client.
Okay, so let's look at it here. I'm gonna do sign up with all the information, hit send, and we have welcome, whatever username, registration successful, or successful, right? The problem is, here I'm not really using middleware, or basically this, I could have just written this function like that, and this is basically the same thing. Right? I could have just written this function here instead of having it there. And I have an error. Let's see, where does this one match? This one matches the else, then another one for that one and that one. So I could have just written that function here instead of taking it to another one, right? So, but there was a reason why I took this to another function. And that is because I want to take advantage of the middleware architecture that Express has. Why do I want to do that? What if I want this validate input function to be flexible so that I could use it in other routes, not only in the sign up, but also in the login, right? They'll need to log in. Maybe for the login, they don't need the email. But what if I want to reuse this function? This function is checking if all the information is there, and if it's there, it says welcome registration successful, right? But if I want to use this validate function for like checking if they included all the information for a login request, I don't want to say registration successful. I would like to say something like login successful, right? So let's think about, or some question. I saw some hands raised. Yes, do this.
Could you just say if not reg body, then, or is no, if not new user?
I cannot say if not reg body, because reg body will be an empty object, and an empty object is it truthy or falsy?
That's false.
It's truthy actually. That's why I cannot use it. If I do node not empty object, true. So I cannot really use empty object to tell whether some information is there or not. So what I want to do is I want to use this function as a middleware function that will let me validate the user information. And if there is no information, then just respond saying missing username, email, or password. But if there is information, if we have all the information, I want to call the next middleware, which will be something like welcome user. So let's turn this into more of a middleware architecture. So I'm going to get this out of here. And I'm going to say something like validate input, comma, welcome or welcome new user. So this is a function that I haven't written yet. Let's just do it here. Const welcome user, welcome new user. All middleware functions, just like since they are also right handlers, receive the request, the response, and next. You can skip next, so you don't need to include it if you're not going to use it. Now here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this res.json from here, cut that, and paste it in here in welcome user. I cut the res.json with the welcome message from the validated input function and I pasted that on the welcome new user function. So that I have, this is another, this function, if we think about it, this function was doing two jobs. Was doing two things. It was checking if all the information was there, and it was replying with an error or a success message. Right? Now I have this function do only one thing. I'm going to have my validate function do only one thing, which is better than a function doing two things. What it's going to do is going to verify if the user has the information. If there is no information, then just send the error message. Otherwise, invoke the other function, the next function, to handle the registration successful. Yes, Michael. Oh, that's here. That's a good point. So what Mike spotted here was that in this function, in the welcome new user function, I don't have a variable called new user, right? Where am I going to get this from? Well, where is the new user traveling in? It's traveling in the rec.body. And here, this function has access to the request right here. So I could just say here, let new user equal rec.body. There's also that, that concept that the request is traveling through the middleware. If I can access the request body on the first middleware, I can access it on the second one. Well, that is if the request makes it to the second one. We know that it's not going to make it to the second one if no username is included or no email is included. So let's see now this. This open postman here. Sign up. I'm not gonna include the password. I'm gonna hit enter. It says missing username, email, or password. Now I'm gonna include the password. The validate function will be invoked. We are not going to fall into this if statement because all the information is included. We're gonna go to the else, and the else is instructing Express to call the next middleware. Who's the next middleware? Literally, the one that comes after the validate input. The next one. The next one will be welcome new user. So it's gonna validate input first. If this function calls next, then it calls Express will call welcome new user. So let's take a look at that. Here I have all the information included. Hit send. And we have welcome. Registration was successful. So we have now our first middleware that is actually doing something here. Like when we create, I'm telling you that once we get to databases and user authentication, we're going to have a function like this that is going to check if the password that the user specified to log in is their actual correct password. If that's not their password, we're going to reply with a message saying password incorrect. If it is correct, we're going to call the next middleware, and the next middleware will give them their profile information or whatever, something like that. Malik?
It works good line in terminal. There's an error talking about cannot set headers after we have sent to the client.
So I think, raise your hand if you have seen that error before. I'm sure all of you have seen it. A little bit louder, Malik.
Cannot set headers after they are sent to the client.
Cannot set headers after they are sent to the client. If you haven't read that, that means that you're not reading the errors. Because everyone gets that one. I think, Malik, it might be because you still have this Rust JSON in here, or not here. Oh yeah, here. Do you have something like this? So when you get the error saying cannot set headers after they have been sent to the client, that means that you have you're trying to send more than one response, and you cannot set more than one response. One request, one response. If I try to do so, Malik, I don't know exactly where you're sending two responses, but I could replicate that if I try to do this. Rest.send hello. So note that here my welcome new user is trying to send two responses, one with rest.json that is going to be in JSON format, and one with rest.send that is going to be just raw text. Let's look at the beautiful error that we're going to see next. Let's go Postman, open this terminal here, hit send, and this should match Malik's error. Cannot set headers after they're sent to the client. Right? That is because my server replied with this, and in my code, I'm trying to reply again with a rest.send. Basically, I'm trying to send two responses which are not allowed. I think somebody had a question. Joanne? It's staying in the if. And you are sure to have all this information in Postman. And is that information in XWW form URL encoded? Got it. Okay. What about your if statement here? Are these all not, or not, or not? Then JR will need to go to the rescue. Or I mean, that's fine too. Basically, your if statement is always resulting to be true. We'll see if you can find it. So this is the concept of middleware. How many middleware you can have here? Potentially an infinite amount. You could have as many as your computer has memory, basically. You rarely have more than 4 though. One will be for possibly checking the validating input. This is a very common use, like validating input. Also, if we think about, we could make this function a little bit better. We could check. Let's check if the email is actually an email. Let's check if they have the @ and a .com or a .net. That will be this function could do that work, right? And then the function welcome new user will take care of welcoming the user in case everything goes well. But you note here that it permeates all software engineering, which is separation of concerns. And one function doing one thing. Yes? I think Michael first.
I was going to say, so how could you check if a username already exists? Would that be another call? I mean, the server call, let's say it's
Mm-hmm. That could be this function. That could be this. That could be this function, or I could create another middleware function saying like, check if already exists, and that function will go to the database or whatever I keep a list of users and check if the user is already there. If it is, then reply with an error. Mm-hmm. Lucas.
Oh, I was just wondering if middleware is the sort of thing that's going to encode like the tail end of your, or the beginning of your credit card information before it shows it to you.
Oh, yeah, that's a good way. Yeah, middleware could do that. That is a nice little functionality that a middleware could do for keeping like credit card information hidden. A middleware could be, but that will be that will be a middleware when the response is going back down instead of the request. That will be more of a sort of a response middleware. Well, actually, if you think about it, like the last middleware could be, or the last function you have here could have some functionality where it changes the last or the first, I don't know how many digits of your credit card to access. Or let's say that there's your social security number. So the last middleware, what it could do, it could change your social security number to be accessed up until the last 4. That could be done with middleware, yeah. So these are what are known as route level middleware, right? We are applying this middleware, this validated input function to this route specifically. The other routes are not affected by that. Like if I still try to do this one, this will be a GET request, and the middleware that we have there is A. That one is not affected because I'm only having this middleware here, validated input, is just for this request and for this method post. Right? So let's take an 8-minute break and be back for the app level middleware. So as Michael gave us the idea, let's implement this function with whoever is sitting near you. I'm going to share it on Slack so you don't have to type all that. Code. Edit message. Huh. So copy that to your server and write the code there. And yeah, work with whoever is sitting near you.
We did that exercise.
That's the problem.
Raise your hand if you're done. Okay, let's do 5 more minutes.
So when you do 14, it's going to give you the value of the key. In an array, it will give you 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I think that would be because then
I'll try and do
because what if they and then it will be less low. I mean, it's not like yeah, it doesn't really matter about us. It's
It doesn't, it's not even working, but, because it's saying that this, that user's already taken. So if you do whatever, like, when you put, like, this is registered name. Oh, so if it pushes, right.
If you have another thing, basically checks everything. Not the request, the response. Outside.
Well, I guess you're having some oh no, I just feel like it's fact line for still hard walking.
Yeah, I mean,
For every check
So I ran into work like I was
Then yeah, like that's like that's when you how do I just save the data?
Oh, you know, if I put a link of my shit, I just gotta finish and I put a label. I think the name is a but I gotta finish. I know why it keeps running.
Raise your hand if you need more time. Okay, a few of you.
Do 2 more minutes.
That's like you get closer to the TV. If you're done, check with somebody that is not sitting next to you. Check how they did it, and you're gonna see some differences on the approach. You guys,
I'll show you tomorrow. We really figured out. How you guys?
I'm thinking everybody uses that because it's less. Right, but I guess this one is just username, right? Yeah, so what I'm saying is that was the easy one. Like you have the username. And then those in there, and that was the thing I do. I can't do anything.
You got way too late last night. Just trying to stack things. I've got the scores as well again. Figure out what I'm doing.
I'm so far right now.
Yeah, no, in my own head.
We get a corona if you want.
Let me take you up on that.
Okay, so what were some of the ways in which your peers solved it? Yes, for loop. Okay, tell me more about the for loop. How does the for loop work?
Well, for the user, it's the same thing for so I use the let new user and support that equals request that body.
Uh-huh.
And then under the if statement, and it says it's not a new user.
Okay, wait. You said you talked about a loop.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. I apologize.
Okay.
So available names. I did a class available names. I'm sorry. And then I did let me brought that down. Then before let username of registered name.
Username of register usernames.
Open function. And then put an if statement. Well, if in there.
Thank you.
New user.
If
New user.
oh, so you call this new user.
Yes. Sorry.
That's
Yeah.
fine. That's fine. New user.
Dot username. Triple equal to username.
To one of the usernames coming from the array.
Right. And
Then
and then the response JSON. And I
Okay.
started of course with the error.
JSON error username taken, and I taken. I don't know how to spell taken. Try another one. Okay.
And then after that, I put the next
After that, inside of the if statement or outside?
outside.
Outside of the if statement, inside of the for loop or outside of the for loop?
They right now outside of for loop.
Outside of the for loop. Why outside of the for loop?
Because I think it would just keep going if I'm not mistaken in the for loop.
Right. We don't want to call next 4 times or 3 times every time we're looping. Right. We only want to call next once we know that we didn't find that username. Yeah. I think this might give us an error saying cannot set headers after they're sent. Well, let's see that. So what I'm gonna do here. Oh, and then how do I call it here?
Well, I put the welcome new user underneath it.
What do you mean underneath?
Well, that function.
This one?
After it, yeah. Well, the one we had before.
So you have this one like on top of welcome username.
Yeah.
Okay, that doesn't matter really in here. The order of the definition doesn't matter, but the order in which we use here it does matter.
Yes. So that's validate input, welcome available username, and then welcome.
And why in that order?
Because you kind of have to use that welcome new user inside available username because you need to check it. Right?
Who can help Deja on why? Yeah.
The
Please.
available username acts like a check before you,
Mhm. Before you can welcome anyone, right?
It's like an additional check after you validate it.
Yeah. So this one will check whether we have all the information. If we have all the information, good. Let's check if that username is not already taken. That is available username responsibility. And then if this goes well, then let's just welcome that user because that user didn't exist. Right? That's why this order. Let's see if it works. Go to Postman. Oh, my server is running. It is running. On Postman now, let's try sign up. Let's try with a username that doesn't exist. I change this to 4376. Sign up. Welcome 4376. I did get the error here. Cannot set headers after they are sent. Let's take care of that next. But let's try in here with a username that is already taken. So I got the welcome. That's good. So that means that my request passed through the validate input. Validate input didn't complain. That was good. Then it was shipped or passed to the available username, and that didn't complain. That went well. Then it was passed to the next middleware function, which was the welcome new user, and this is coming. This message is coming from there, right? So let's try now with 4373, which is one that is used. Hit send, and we have username taken. Try another one. So this works. This works. The only downside is that we have this error polluting our terminal. Yeah.
I think it's still not working, right? Use the second name in the array.
Use the second name in the array? Oh, let's see. So the second name, let's try order this last one. Would it work with the last one too? Or would it break?
Yeah, it's not going to work.
It's not gonna work. Let's see why. So this is the last person in the array. So this is not the first person in the array. Let's see. Username taken. Try another one. Let's try order 2. This should be good because that username is taken. I think what you were thinking about was if I had let the next inside of the for loop, I will get the error that I think you're thinking about. So now let's get rid of this error that is saying, or let's understand why we're getting this error. Cannot set headers after they are sent. What did I say about this error? When do you get this error?
When you're trying to send two things at the same time.
When you're trying to send two responses, yeah? What two responses am I trying to send here? Is my code trying to send? Michael?
It's looping through. If the condition is true, it's going to send a JSON.
Uh-huh.
And then once that loop is done, it's going to do next, which the next function is welcome to user. And that sends another response.
Mm-hmm. Did everyone hear that? A little bit louder.
So basically, it's going to loop. It's going to do the loop. The condition is true, and it's going to send the first response, the username taken. Once that loop is done, it's going to do next. It's going to call the next function, which is welcome new user, and that's going to try to send another response.
Yeah. That was good. Thank you, Michael. That is the perfect explanation why we're getting two, or this error message saying headers already sent. You're trying to send two responses. So how do we get rid of that, Cameron?
So leave the function once you got the duplicate.
Leave the function once we found the duplicate, right? And what that means is then just entirely quit this function. Once we found a duplicate, how do we quit functions? Return. So I'm going to quit here. After the response has been sent, we're good. We can go home. Let's see if the error is going to stop popping up. And we kill the server, start it again. Let's try order. Username taken. Good. Try order 2. Oh, we still had it. Cannot set headers after they are sent to the client. This is when we tried a new username. Anyone has an idea why we're getting the second one? Yes, Michael?
The username is not true.
The username is not true.
So it's just going to next.
Sending it again.
Wait, this here? Oh,
This,
which is,
this.
no, it's going to the next and then the next. Trying to return. Oh, right, this is quitting too early. This is quitting the loop. This is quitting the if statement, the loop, and the function. Wait, no, not here.
What else? Put it else in there so you can see it.
I did it a different way.
Set to the end of the first step.
So if we send this response, then just quit here. Wait, this is saying, let's see. So yeah, we don't want this to quit too early. Okay, yeah, no, this is fine. So the problem is that it's welcome new user. Oh, this is this. I was literally sending two responses with res.send and res.json. So now we're good. We're good. So that works. Username that is taken also works. Questions? Yes.
I tried to be tricky and put, so just before the next, to push the new user into the registered user's name array, but it wouldn't say it.
Yeah.
Like I tried to send the same one twice, if that was a new user that wasn't already in the array, and I thought maybe the second time catch it.
So what Douglas was trying, let's see that, is if the username is not in the array, let's just add it because, you know, it's a new user that registered. So let's do that in here. So we will note that if we never quit here, which is then here. Let's do registered usernames that push new user that username. Right? So this will hopefully add the new username. And we're gonna find out like why is it not gonna save. Let's see, Sharar.
We put the registered usernames inside the function, so whenever the function is going to be called, it's going to reinitialize that array.
Yeah, so here it's not gonna be saved because this variable is a local variable that gets initialized every time we call available username. How many times do we call? How many times do we call available username? As many as we registered, as many as we send post requests, right? That's a good question. Const, or when we do const on let, we're talking about the reference to register usernames cannot change. So like constant let are tricky on objects and arrays because the content can change, but the reference cannot. Like this is actually true for all data types. When you have a const, the reference cannot change. So basically, I cannot say register. I picked this name too long. Usernames equal an empty object or empty array. This is going to complain. Thank you. This is going to complain because saying assignment to constant variable. I cannot change, I cannot give a new array to be held in a const variable, but I can modify the content. I can push new elements. It's like imagine yeah, sort of. That's a good analogy. Yes.
But does that rate have to be separate? If there's no space in memory, you have to go to a different place.
That is a case that I have never encountered, but it's definitely an interesting case. Yeah, because then that will cause the reference to change. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think you should look into that. Cool. So, other questions about this? Oh, wait. We were adding the new username. So we see. Does everyone see like that? It's going to be the array. We basically get a brand new array every time, and the user will not be, saved really, because every time we create a new. All right, let's do this. Let's console log here. Console log users. Take this here. Console log register usernames. So let's do that there, and let's do that after the push. And then let's do this before and after. So I'm just console logging before and after the registered users. Let's see this here. Send that. Oh, this is going to say username already taken, right? So we quit earlier. To 2. And we see that here before ran, but the after never ran. Right? Let's hit it again. So now this is the before. We have the same array. And then the after now order is there. Oh, and I sent Peter. Note here what the before is going to be. The before no longer has order 2. That is again because what we were discussing earlier, this array of usernames is a local variable. Every time the function is called, a new array is created. This new array is created. We could solve that if we take this outside and make it a global variable. Then let's leave the before and after still. I just took the array to a global variable. Let's try to do Peter. Now we have Peter there. Let's try to do order 2. Now we have Peter in order. 6.6.2. Now we have 6.2. If we try to register Peter again, the username is taken. Yes, Joy?
Does that open you up to security clause then? Because you can alter the
I cannot really alter the code. I can alter the content of the array, but no, it doesn't let me execute code. Yeah, remote code execution. That's what it's known for, but this is not the case here. Cool. So there's this is a fine way. I was surprised that nobody remembered the dot includes function. Who used dot includes? You guys are sort of in the fall. Yeah, the dot includes makes this so much more readable. Basically, just the if statement. Yes.
So if you restart the server, it's going to reset the thing, right?
Oh yeah, so that's another issue that we have. If I restart the server, then I'm back to my original usernames. That is the problem. This is the problem that we're going to solve next week. How do we make this data persist? How do we store this data to a database so that it lives for a longer time? With Postgres and the SQL language, yes. Mm-hmm. Cool. Any other questions regarding this middleware? And how the request travels through this? I like to visualize this as just the pipe with some other chunks that I add to it to do extra work. Cool. Also, something else that I forgot to say is these are, as we said, the two options that the middleware has. They are mutually exclusive, right? So a middleware cannot do both. And also, the middleware must do at least one. If it doesn't do either, then your server hangs. The middleware must always do one. One of the two. Cannot do both, but it must always do at least one. Okay, so that is what we saw is route level middleware. I think, we're gonna see the app level middleware, which is literally the same thing, but just applying to all the routes. Imagine if we wanted to do input validation for all the routes, we'll do an app level middleware. If we could do, I guess let's just move into that. So we saw that, for instance, the body parser is a middleware that we didn't write, but it's a middleware. The body parser is an app level middleware. It's an app level middleware because it will parse the body of all the requests, no matter what the response, no matter what their method is. The body parser is a app level middleware. Let's look at another one. Let me see what do I have here. So we have been using app-wide or app-level middleware, course, and body parser. Those are both app-level middleware. Let's implement course ourselves. So let's actually see. Let's see course taking place. So let's see again why course and how to enable course. So far we've been making network requests with Postman or with curl, right? Postman and curl are not web applications, right? They are just computer applications. So Postman and curl are not subject to the course policy, right? And the course policy is a security measure that browsers implement to not allow websites to access external resources unless the owner of those resources allowed it explicitly through a header in the response. So right now, my website can be accessed through Postman or through curl, or not my website, my server. But it cannot be accessed. I cannot retrieve information from here with a website. So let's look at that. And then that takes us into core and into course and into app-wide middleware. So I'm going to, for this, let's just create an HTML files here. So server, I'm going to do touch index HTML, and then also index.js. So I have two files, and I open those here. Bless you. HTML5. Oh, because I disable intelligence, the IntelliSense. Now I have to type all this myself. Head and body. On the head, I'm going to have a script. Source. Index.js. I'm not even going to specify the type. What? I already forgot. This is just a small demonstration as to how I cannot access my server, my backend server, or my API from a website. And then that's pretty much it. I don't even need a body. So let's have this index.html. Now I'm going to go to the index.js file. In here, let's wait for the DOM to load. Document add event listener. DOM content loaded. DOM content loaded, and I'm going to do fetch. Let me create sort of like a URL here. Yes. Raise your hand if you want to see this with Axios. Cool. So to use Axios, then we need to import another script in here. Does anybody knows that by memory? Well, I don't either. Say that again? No, I cannot npm install. For code that is running, some of you have done this. For code that is running in the browser, npm doesn't work in the browser. npm is only for Node, the Node package manager. If it was for the web, you could just look it up on Google or take it from one of the previous projects. So for using Axios, then let's do axios.get. So I'm going to do axios.post to try to register a user. And in here, I'm going to use the URL. Let URL equal p 3000 / sign up. So URL. And do you guys want to use Axios with async await or with then catch? Async await? Okay. So for using async await, we need to make this function the event listener function or the event handler, whatever you want to call this callback. We need to make it async. And then here, then we can await on Axios. Let's do let res or response equal await Axios.post. Also, it should be anytime you're doing await, you should have try catch too. So I'm gonna do something like try that. This is like literally try that. Try line number 4, And if that fails, catch here. Now let's do console log error. So this is just to demonstrate course and to see how we're going to write our own app-wide or app-level middleware to handle course instead of having to install the one from npm. So let's do console log here. Console log response. Okay, so as I said before, our server is accessible from Postman, Core, or non-website applications, but is not accessible from a website, at least at this moment, because we haven't explicitly allowed websites to access it. So let's see this. Let's open up. Let's do console log downloaded just to make sure. And then I'm just going to open up this file, the index.html file, in my browser. Let's open the console. Console downloaded. Nice. But we got an error. And this is error. This error is all about course. This is what I'm saying. Our server cannot be accessed from a website because the browser said that's not safe. Let's only allow websites to access a server or an API if the API explicitly says you are allowed to access this API or this server. So this is the error that we get here. Access to blah, blah, blah to at this URL from origin null has been blocked by course policy. No access control allow origin header is present on the requested resource. So that error is saying that this error is the browser saying, oh, you are not allowed to access that API because that API, I'm looking at what that API is going to give you, and nowhere in the response says you're allowed to access this, right? So for having that, for explicitly allowing our server and our API, or not for explicitly allowing a website to access our API, we must add a header to the response that our server gives. That header is this one. This one, a header name, access control allow origin. So we could use course in our server. So I'm going to close this index.js and index.html. So in my server now, I'm going to use course. Const course equal require course. Require course. And then just like we did app.use body parser, now we say app.use course. We're going to write course ourselves in a few minutes. So if you think about it, the course is a middleware. So all the requests will pass through it. And what this module is going to do is going to add that header that we need, the access control allow origin header, to all the responses. And then the browser, when it makes a request, says, oh, you are allowed to access this resource because you have this header that I'm looking for. Yes? I'm not sure. I haven't tried it. I think the API is supposed to do one app.use per middleware that you want to initialize. You mean like if you could do like body parser, comma, URL encoded. Yeah. Let's go here real quick to the Express documentation. Express documentation, let's do API reference, application, app.use, path callback. Oh, it seems that you can, yeah. Janesh, I think you can. Yeah, because it's like, you see this app.use, path, then callback, callback. Yeah. Let's say it like this first. Yeah. Let's say it like this. So, course is a middleware. All the requests are going to pass through the course function. What the course function is going to do is, just like as I said here, do something with the request. Actually, this will be like something with the request or the response. The course middleware is going to do something with the request or the response, and then call the next middleware. What is course going to do is going to add that header. Control allow. It's going to add that header. So let's see that happening. Now, since I enable course, but I never install course. I never install course, and then here we have the server crashing saying cannot find module course. When you find these cannot find module Axios, cannot find module Express, that's because you didn't install it. I'm going to kill this server here and do npm install course. Oh, yeah, that doesn't matter. I think I saw a question here.
I was asking you npm install model server.
Yeah, but I think it's better you kill it because the server has some stuff in memory loaded. That if you don't kill it, then it will not get. I'm not sure if no one is looking inside the node modules. Yeah. Okay, so I just installed course. Now my app depends on two things, on Express and course. If I do cat package JSON, we see that course. Oh, it also depends on body parser. Now we see that course is added to my dependencies. Request that just failed here. I'm just gonna refresh this page. This request just failed because also we can see here. Let's see this before. Actually, we can't now. I wanted to show you that the request that was sent didn't have that header. Or the response, not the request that was sent, the response that was gotten from the server didn't have this header. Now, once I refresh this, a network request will be made, and that header is going to be there. Let's do Command-Shift-R to do a hard reload. And we got it. We got our data now here. We say like missing username, email, and password, right? Because I didn't send that information. But what matters here is that we don't have the course errors anymore. If we go to the network request tab, we can find the sign up request that was going to this URL, that was a post method, and then here we can see the response headers. Now we have this guy here. The access control allow origin header was put here by the course module, the course package, the course middleware. Let's see what happens if I remove it. I'm gonna remove just console log it just before so that we see it again. I'm gonna comment out this course usage. Now, I was doing experimenting with this before, and I had to click here, disable cache. Because if I refresh here, it's still gonna give me, oh, okay, it didn't do that. That's good. Never mind. We see it failing again. We see it failing because if we go to the network request, we see here that the request was made. The sign up request was made. I believe, yeah, we don't, the browser doesn't let us see the response because in the headers of this response, we don't have access control allow origin. The course middleware is the one that is adding that header to our function here. Cool. So it does that through the app level or app wide middleware. So let's do that ourselves now. So you know what? Let's remove course. You probably haven't done this yet, but I'm going to do npm remove course. This is going to remove course from my, I hope so. Remove course from my dependencies. I don't want to use course. I want to write course myself. Let's do cat package just to see course is no longer here. Right? So I remove course, saying, you know what? Fuck course. I'm gonna. That's good. That's good. Sometimes you have to give surprises. So I'm not going to use course here. What I'm going to do is write our own. I'm going to do const. I'm going to create my function for like handle course. This is just going to be like any other middleware. You get the request, the response, next. Then I'm going to say, so for using app level or app-wide middleware, you do app.use, and then you pass in your executed for all the routes, all the methods. And the second difference is that for adding that middleware, we use app.use, handle course. So what handle course needs to do is the same as for the other middleware. It needs to do something with the response or the request, and then call next. So what we want to do here is I want to set the header access control allow origin, and we do that in the response. I'm going to say res.set. And here, this function takes in two arguments. One is the name of the header that I want to send, and the value of the header. And the name of the header is access control. I think the spelling doesn't matter. Control allow origin. The value of that header, I want it to be star. This header is saying, allow this website, allow this server, allow this API to be accessed from any website, from any origin. So let's do that. And then the next thing, after it did its thing with the response, I want to call next.
Did you delete the course required?
Yes. I removed it. I did npm remove course to remove it from my node modules too. Yes.
Like when you're using app.use for course, do you have to also include the empty parentheses after handle course, or just the variable name?
That's a good question. I don't need to call it here when I'm doing it myself. It's a little bit. It's something we haven't seen yet, which is course is a function that returns another function.
Okay.
Yeah. But in here, our function is this. We want to call this function. This function will be called for all the routes, for all the methods. Let's see if this works now. We will find if it works if our response has this header and the browser doesn't complain. let's go back to our simple website that is firing a network request upon reloading the page. I'm going to refresh this. Let's go to the console. This was the last time we tried removing course. Refresh. We got network error. Connection refuse. Maybe my server is down. Oh, my server is down. Server is down. Once the server is back up, let's call it. Connection refuse most of the time means you have the wrong URL or your server is down. Refresh console, and we have our data here. Now we have our data. Now we're not using course, or we are implementing it ourselves because this middleware that we say call handle course receives. So this is you can think of it in the analogy of a long pipe that you can just add new chunks to. This handle course is like one at the top. All the requests will go through it. All the requests and the response object. And then once it does whatever it needs to do, I call next. Yes? I think this is from some of the other projects that I've worked on. I think you guys shouldn't be seeing this. You all got it? This is new then. We could look at it later on. Yeah. Yes. To the front end? Sure. This is just a file that is making a network request as soon as it downloads. Nothing comes out after. Are you sure you're doing like the try cache, the access await? And somebody is still seeing the course error in the browser? Cool. So we implemented an app level middleware, right? What would be another good use? Yes. That's like a valid question. So Giselle asked, why is it that we're setting the header in the response instead of the header in the request, right? Since the request is what's coming in. So the reason for that is, so it's a little bit complex, but I'm going to try to explain. So when you send a network request to an API, to a server, you have the control to add any request headers that you want, right? And then the server can do something with those headers. One header is like accept content type. That header will tell the browser what kind of data the client, that header will tell the server what kind of data the browser or the client is expecting back. So the request headers are added by you and the browser, and they're sent to the server. The server cannot really change the request headers because they come from a third party, the browser or the client. But the response has the server has control over the response headers, and in this case, course explicitly applies to the response headers. The response headers are the ones that tell the browser what the response was about. It tells it like how long the response was and other extra information. Other questions regarding the app-wide middleware? Think about what would be another good use case for, doing something on every request or on every response? Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So the only difference between the route level and the app level is that we add scores.
Is that one more time?
Add the cores.
When we added the course? No. So the differences are two. So, well, one, the middleware are all the same in the signature, right? They all receive the request, the response, and next. So in that they're the same. But they differ. The app level differs from the route level in two things. One is the app level receives or all the requests and responses for all the endpoints coming on all the methods pass through the app level middleware. When you have route level middleware here, only the requests that are GET and that came to this endpoint pass through them. But on app level, all the requests, no matter what method they're using, no matter what endpoint they're using, will pass through the app level middleware. The other difference is the way in which you use it, which is for a app level middleware, you do app.use and then the middleware. On a route level middleware, you use in app.get or app.post in one specific route, and you separate them by commas. They're actually under the hood. That last point is not fully true. Like, they're actually the same under the hood. Yeah. Yeah.
You specify middleware just for certain methods?
I think so. Yeah, there is a. Well, you could just do it here also. You could do it here, for instance. Let's say I only want to handle course for post methods, so I could just do if the request method is post, then do that. I'm sure there is a better way, probably in the documentation. Other questions or comments on this one? Let's implement one of my favorite global middleware, which is the login middleware. There is one that we're going to be using later, but let's implement it ourselves. It's called Morgan, npm.js. Morgan is a middleware. Morgan is an app-level middleware that will log HTTP request logger middleware for Node.js. So this is the middleware that would allow us to do something like this. To show something like this for our server. What this middleware does, do we have an image? Morgan.js, let's try this. Images. Yeah, they look like this. Open image in new tab. So when you have Morgan, this is a big image. Yeah. So when you have Morgan installed, you can get this log of all the requests that were made and what kind of request was made. So for instance, this was a GET request to the root endpoint. We reply with a 200. It took 300 milliseconds. And then, for instance, there is a GET request to /users. to reply with 200. So let's do one like this. Instead of installing Morgan, which we're gonna be using later on, let's just do one very simple one for us here. Again, this is useful for keeping track of maybe your API is not handling errors or is being abused. This can help you see that. This is mostly used. Now this is used in development and as well in production too. So let's look at that. So how would we implement something like this? I'm gonna create. Actually, I'm not gonna create a function for this one. I'm just gonna say app.use, and I'm gonna define the function in here. Here we created a function aside for this. This one, I'm just not gonna create the function on a separate variable. I'm just gonna define this function here in the arguments themselves. They're the same. It doesn't really matter how you create your middleware. If it's a middleware that you plan to reuse, then it's better to have it in a function, in a variable with a name. If it's a one-time use only, it's fine to define it here. So let's do app.use here. So what Morgan is doing is just looking at all the requests of all the methods and logging in what kind of request it was or what method was used, what endpoint, the time. We're not gonna get into the milliseconds. We could log when it happened though. So let's do that here. So basically, this is gonna be a simple console log. Rec. Let's do string interpolate. No, let's just do rec that method. In here we got the method. Maybe we want that followed by rec that endpoint. Is that a thing? Maybe not. URL. URL is a thing. And then the current time. New date. Now, after the middleware has done something with either the request or the response, the middleware has the option to send that response. In this case, I don't want to send that response just after login. I want to call the next one. Now with this, you have a very simple version of what Morgan does, which is logging every request. So let's see that here. Ours is not gonna be as fancy as this one with colors and stuff, but it still works. Let's make the request with like postman. Oh, I have a bunch of other console logs. Let me get rid of those. This one is fine. I think that's it. Yeah. Say that. I have my server running. Let's make a request with Postman. And we have what kind of request we got and to what endpoint was it called. Let's even see maybe what else can we see. Let's see the request body if we have a request body. Let's go back here. Rec body. I'm gonna make this state a little bit more human readable by doing new date. Let's do the date here. Let current date equal new date. Creating a new date object. I'm going to do current date dot to locale string. So this middleware, since it's an app level or app-wide middleware, will be executed for all the endpoints, all the methods, and allow us to have to log every request that is made. So this will make this date that we saw here. This date is, I mean, you can read it, but it's a little bit harder to read, right? You can see that this is today, 21:35. Some people are not familiar with the military time. And you see this is 21, this is 9 p.m., 9 p.m. and 35 minutes. And we are at 17:37, which is 5 p.m. So this is saying, this is the Greenwich meridian, is that correct? Yeah, like in the middle, this is the time there. So to local string, what does is it converts that date from that harder to understand to local date, easier to visualize. So let's see what we have. Let's make a request, sign up. We have the method, we have the endpoint, we have the body, and we have the time at which that request was made. Let's try another one. Let's just try slash. It's not gonna do anything. Slash, we got a get request. Get requests don't have bodies. And that happened at 5:38 p.m. Let's try 6.2. Get request was made to slash 6.2. Doesn't have a body. That happened at 5:38 with 19 seconds. Let's try a delete request, even though we're not handling them. A delete request was made. So can we start to see why we want to use route or app-wide, app-level middleware? Yes, Hugo? No. App-wide or app-level middleware is used for whenever you want to do something on all the requests or all the responses. Like in this case, I want to console log them all. Or I want to add a header to all the responses. So body parser works just like this. If we could see inside of body parser, well, body parser is a little bit bigger than this function, but it's doing. You can be sure that it's doing something with the request to parse the data and populate rec.body, and you could also be sure that at some point it's calling next. Otherwise, you wouldn't see the request.body ever. Other questions or comments? What else would we want to do on all requests and all responses? I'm trying to think. You know, like this is a core concept in Express. If you have, like, if you master this, you're gonna be good in Express. Because from here, we're just gonna be using a lot of middleware. Oh, something else that we're gonna use, for instance, we're gonna use global, like our app level middleware to do nested routing, right? So if we have a route like if we have a route, let's say /users, and we can have the /users /sign up /users /login /users /delete or remove. So those are three sub routes under the /users. We could we're gonna see that, I think, this week, nested routing, and we're gonna see how that is also middleware, because we're basically gonna say, for all the requests that come to /users, no matter what method they're using, send them to this other function that then will be looking for /sign up or /login or /delete. We're gonna see that next week in the next nested routing. Let's see that. Calendar. That will be Tuesday. So let me just make sure. Let's see what I said. Oh, I guess we did this one. Cool. Any other questions, comments? So please fill out the ASIC ticket, and that will be for today. People are happy. Wait, let me